Hi, welcome to Kitchen Chats. I am your host, Aimee Kandrac, and today I have the very special honor and privilege of welcoming Rachel Macy Stafford to join me, the hands-free mama. And today we are going to start chatting about helping our kids through crisis. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So, for our new listeners, I like to start every conversation with my guests asking the same question. And I'm here in my kitchen where I have intimate conversations with people. And I'm wondering, Rachel, if you have a kitchen moment that comes to mind that you would be willing to share with our listeners.
Yes, I sure do. So I remember this so distinctly. It was about 3 months after my father-in-law passed away, and my neighbor knocked on my door, and she had read something that I wrote on my blog about a very dark night that I had gone through right after my father-in-law passed away. And it struck me as odd that she came to my door because, in this day and age, nobody comes to your door. They just text you or whatever. But there she was knocking at my door. And I opened it and she said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And I was like, "Sure, come on in." We sat down in the kitchen and she's like, "I just read about your dark night that you very vulnerably shared. It was a night that I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay here any longer." And she looked in my face and she said, "I want you to know that you don't have to be strong with me." And she said, "You write and hold up so many people with your words and the things that you do with your work, and you have to be strong." And she said, "You don't have to be strong with me." And she said, "If you ever feel like that again, you can tell me and you can call me and you can do whatever, and I will be there." And I've just really made a point to start saying that to people because we all know our strong friends. And how often do we look at them in the face and say, "Remember, you don't have to be strong with me."
And that would not have come across the right way in text. I mean, it
Nope.
would have, but how
Exactly.
meaningful.
Exactly. And
And
there
how
is something
special.
about people when they look into your face and they say something and you feel it
Mm-hmm.
in your body that
Mm-hmm.
this is not a platitude. This is my friend caring about me and wanting me to know this to the depths of my soul.
Oh, that is so special. Thank you to your friend
Yes.
for giving you that opportunity to feel that in your soul
Hmm.
and have that reminder.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have so many amazing books, so many heartfelt, vulnerable words that I think sometimes people forget how important it is for everyone to be reminded
Hmm.
that you can be vulnerable with some of us, right? Oh,
Absolutely.
well, thank you.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
Now to transition to how are we going to be the strong ones for our kids? Gosh, you're making it a little harder to, but not really, right? Because
No. Mm-mm.
helping our kids through crisis, I've had quite a few instances with my kiddos and definitely with my friends' kiddos, and if we can't be there for each other as
Mm-hmm.
moms and friends and spouses and all of that kind of stuff, we can't support our kids the same way.
No. And if you are not vulnerable about your struggles and how you're coping or you're not coping, I share my unhealthy coping mechanisms with my kids just as much as my healthy ones.
Mm-hmm.
And being vulnerable in that way allows our kids to be vulnerable with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I didn't know for the first, 6 or 7 years of my older daughter's life. I thought, well, I have to look like everything's perfect. I have to be the strong one. I have to know all the answers. But in actuality, Natalie, my oldest, is very intuitive, very observant. She could see that I was falling apart. Something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to tell her, I am mean to myself sometimes. And when I'm mean to you, and when I'm mean to me, I'm mean to you. And I will never forget how Natalie looked at me like, not like I had told her something surprising. It was like, oh, yes, I know. And I'm so glad we can talk about this. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, I don't know how I'm going to stop being so mean to myself, but I'm going to try. And I'm sorry that it took me this long to figure out what I was doing to us.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
Yeah.
that was a pivotal moment to realize, wow, my humanness is not a weakness in my relationship with my child. It's a strength. It's a point of connection with her.
And being able to have that realization, I think, is such a huge, as you said, pivotal moment.
Mhm.
I have been a little cranky the past couple of weeks. Just gonna, we'll just use those words. I'm pretty sure other teenage people in my house have used other words maybe to describe it, but on this episode we'll just say that.
I love it.
But sometimes it's not until they point it out to me that I remember, how stressed I've been about the holidays and starting new projects and getting everything done that I need to get done. And I'm walking around like a cranky bitch. And it's not until they're like, hey mom, and then I start to pile on the guilt and the shame and the
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this wasn't I'm so sorry. It really wasn't about you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But getting to a point when my kids were really, really little, I don't think they knew that, right? Like
Oh
there
no.
wasn't a space where they could say, Mom, what's going on? Because they weren't old
Yeah.
enough to understand that kind of stuff yet.
hmm And
So how do we check in with ourselves?
yeah, and I noticed a pattern that, like you mentioned, when I would get anxious about something, um, especially related to leaving the house to go to some kind of social event in the community with my daughters, um, I realized there was a pattern there that I would get really controlling. I would be like a mean taskmaster. And it was through, a lot of introspection and just listening to myself that I realized, oh, whenever we're about to leave the house and I'm about to go do something in public, this is how I behave to my girls. And so it was interesting once I became aware of that to see that being in front of the mirror for me was a trigger of insecurity and a lot of pressure I was putting myself. I was saying things, speaking of being mean to myself, you can't go out looking like that. Or, you know, everyone's going to look this way and you look this way. And so I was tearing myself down in front of the mirror. And then, of course, walking out to my daughters, they're the ones who get the brunt of it.
Uh-huh.
And so that awareness and allowed me to start knowing, okay, one, I'm going to stop getting in front of the mirror if I want to really go and show up for myself
Hmm.
and make my contribution, which everyone has a contribution, I believe.
Yes.
And number two, I can start to tell the girls, they were 7 and around 9 or 10 at the time when I started to tell them, I get anxious when it's time to leave the house. I get worried about, if I'm going to belong, if I'm going to find a friend. I put it in terms that they would understand. And I would say, this is how you can help me. And I would say, I don't want to be a yelling mom. I I don't want you to remember me that way. I don't want you to grow up that way. And I'm trying to work on that. But for me to put the connection between when I get anxious, I get controlling and mean, that was a game changer for me, but also so I could articulate that to my family. So like you said, they don't internalize it. Mom's mad at me. What did
Right.
I do?
Right.
Because that's where they're going to go.
I can't agree with you more with this. Everything you said, in my head is now going to, okay, so now you and I today want to talk about helping people manage life, not even manage, but like, how are we dealing with our kids when we're in crisis? Either when
Mhm.
we personally are in crisis, or when our kids are in crisis, or there's a crisis in the family.
Mhm.
I tend to get very anxious, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And I've seen it with friends before as well. I mean, some people are
Mhm.
much better at handling it than I am. Um, but when there's so much going on, and I feel like for me, especially the crisis and then there's the unknown, and then I turn into the controlling person, right? And when I'm
Right.
walking outside, am I going to fit in? Am I going to have to tell everybody about what's going on?
Yes. Mhm.
How do I manage my mood, and how do I help my kids, um, who might also be feeling some of this and
Yeah,
acting out in certain ways, right?
absolutely. Mhm.
Oh, there, I don't even know the answer.
Well, so my family did have quite a crisis that we're just kind of coming out of right now. Um, but I do remember when I fully realized just how damaging what had happened, how much it affected all of us, every single member of my family, particularly my younger daughter, who that was like the source of the pain. That night, I just wanted to fix it. I wanted it like you're talking about control. Well, yes, you want it to go away. You want to solve this. You don't want people to hurt, but that's not how it goes.
Right.
And I did not do well for the first couple months of it. I I perpetually was doing all the things to try to help her get through it, like looking at resources and reaching out for support and just trying to do everything possible to help her heal. And it was my mom who said to me on the phone one day, she said, Rachel, the person I'm the most worried about right now is you.
Mm.
She said, you're throwing every ounce of energy into healing your family and healing from this crisis that you're not taking care of yourself. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh my gosh, you know, she's absolutely right. How can I expect to help Avery heal if I'm not looking after myself?
Uh-huh.
And so that was a, a an instrumental part of the process, was to stop saying, Rachel, you have to fix this, and say, I can't fix this. What can I control? I can control how I'm treating myself. and my daughter can watch me doing healing things for myself. And so then I was able to also be more, calm when I talked to her. I was not so irrational because I wasn't so stretched so thin. I was starting to pour back into myself. It was powerful to be able to say to her, we're going to focus on what we can focus on, because there were a lot of factors, external factors that she could not control.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to help our teenager by saying, or our child by saying, all right, let's look at what we can control, our response to this.
I understand the control also, but I also want I like diving into the response. That's what I have that I can manage. I have the
Right.
choice of how I am going to respond. And sometimes I have to step back and take a breath and say, okay,
Right.
wait, how do I really want to respond to this?
That's good.
Because my initial response is probably not the right one.
Yep. Yep.
It's not the one that I'm going to want to look back on even in 2 minutes
You're so
sometimes.
right. Yes.
But when I'm in crisis, I know, and I know it's hard for me to remember and to make space for filling myself up. And I know caregivers and moms. So I'm wondering, what are things that you did to remind yourself and to kind of get back to, okay, let me make sure that I can control making myself respond the way that we need to for
Well,
that.
that's a great question. And I'm gonna answer that. But first, I'm gonna tell you what my biggest motivation for stepping back from being the fixer
Mm-hmm.
was to realize that this was also an opportunity for my child, who was 14, 15, 16, to figure out what she needed to thrive and heal. And, so we went to a lot of doctor's appointments, and she would have to start at the beginning, what happened. And I didn't say anything because I realized this is her experience and she can speak for herself. And I checked with her beforehand about, do you want to explain or do you want me to explain? And every time she wanted to explain, and she actually had her own ideas about how she was possibly could get through it. And so that's, for me, was a motivator, because I thought the more I tried to intervene and project my feelings and my ideas on this experience, the more I'm taking away from her ability to navigate a crisis for herself. And we're not raising, people that we want to have to run back to us when they're adults. We want to raise young people who feel confident and capable for making these decisions.
Yes.
And saying, I think this is what's best for me. Or even saying, we would leave a doctor's office and Avery would say, I don't want to go back there. That doctor did not listen to me. That doctor had her own agenda, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, this is the beginnings of boundary setting for our children to be able to say, this is okay, this is not okay. And so seeing that, I need to give her credit here. I don't need to assume she's helpless, because she is not helpless. So,
And congratulations, Mama. You've done a good job raising a person who has
I
gotten
know.
to this point, right? But I sometimes forget that myself when I see
Exactly.
them. But then that is the reminder. We're like, oh my gosh, we're still here.
Yeah.
We're still sitting in the room with them. But
Yes.
wow, they have done. Sometimes I forget to remind myself and to remind them that they are so capable.
Oh my gosh.
And they
And that,
have all of this stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
that is what they need to hear. I love the work of Dr. Lisa Damore. She talks a lot about anxiety
Mm.
with girls, and she's written several books on it. But she uses this phrase that I love is it's a very validating phrase when our teenagers or kids come to us and say, this is what happened. Lisa says a great response is something like, that is, well, she says that stinks, like, oh, this is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part, it's tough and you can handle this. I believe you can handle this. And that, when we are undermining our children and what they are telling us they need to thrive or to heal, we're not we're not giving them the message that we think they're capable. We're giving them the message that we don't think you're capable, so we're going to inject ourselves into this.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the more that I would listen to my daughter about, well, what do you think? How, tell me how you're feeling. What do you think the next thing we should do? The more she trusted and confided in me. Because who
Mm-hmm.
wants to go confide in someone who's just going to say, well, okay, but this is what I think. That
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't feel, I'm the authority of my life. Just because our kids are kids doesn't mean they don't have knowledge of their needs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And in so many of these situations, I don't know what you're feeling. I can't, you can tell me, right? But you're verbalizing that to me is the same way that you're going to verbalize this to the professionals who can help you at the same time.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
But
yeah.
to get back to your question, so I had the motivation, like, all right, Rachel, you don't need to make healing Avery your life's purpose. Like, you need to go and invest in things that will help you be a healthy companion for her on her journey.
Mm-hmm.
This is her journey, not your journey.
Right.
So honestly, the things that I found to be most restorative for me were things that brought me joy as a child.
Oh.
And yeah, I have learned that if you really want to get back to who you are, what makes you happy, what sparks you, you think back to when you were a little kid. Think back to, like, even a specific memory of when you felt really capable or you felt really excited about something. And so I think, first of all, I loved going to the library. I love the smell of books in the library. I love the peace and quiet in the library. And so I started taking myself to the library, and just having good, quiet time. It kind of felt like a bubble. Not that I was running away from my problems, but it helped me get perspective. Like, look at all these books. Look at all this information. The world is vast, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get out of your own problem and say, oh, but wait, there's a whole world out here. And,
Mm-hmm.
so that also connected me to my younger self, before I had all these adult responsibilities. And I
Mm-hmm.
just let myself, feel that part of me, which I call that part of me my dreamer girl, because my dreamer girl was this, like, tree climber and this notebook filler, and stray cats were like my best friend. And, I
Mm-hmm.
just did what I wanted to do. And then, somewhere along the line, people say, oh, no, you can't do that. Oh, no, we don't pet stray cats. We don't spend time frivolously writing in a notebook. We don't climb trees. That's not proper, whatever. So then you lose that, but it's still there. That little dreamer girl or boy, or that little dreamer inside of you is still there with some really great ideas on what can fill you up now as an adult.
Oh, I just had like a huge connection because I was starting to I promise I was paying attention, but I was like going into my head, I was like, okay, so what did I love so much
Mm-hmm.
as a little kid? And it was always playing in the sandbox in my backyard with
Oh,
my sister and my friends.
mm,
And oh, I mean, it makes me a little teary right now to think about it
right.
because what do I do now when I'm like, I need some space to think?
Mm-hmm.
I go to my little garden and
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing in the dirt and
Yep.
I'm working on my flowers and my vegetable garden, and it clears my head. It makes me feel better. I love to give my vegetables that I grow to all my friends. And
Mm-hmm.
that was one of my favorite times.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even put all of that together until
Mm-hmm.
you just mentioned that.
Yeah, there's definitely clues there for us.
Well,
Hmm.
and what I love about this is I feel like I've gotten the permission slip now when
Hmm.
I'm in a stressful time, when I feel like my family's going through a lot. Okay, I need to go get in the garden,
Yeah.
do a little bit of stuff. Brene Brown always says, write yourself a permission slip to do
Mm.
something.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I wonder if that is now another tool in my toolbox and another tool for all parents to have when
Hmm.
they're going through a crisis. Hey, what's going to bring you joy? Because that is actually going to refill you and get you closer to where you can be
Yeah,
a better parent, better supporter, better caregiver.
absolutely. And I accidentally stumbled upon something that was also brought me back to my joyful little dreamer self. I like to take walks in random areas. Like if I get a chance to walk in an area that I'm not familiar with, I always try to take it. And that day, my daughter was in her guitar lesson, and I found this path that I'd never walked on before. And I thought, well, this is so exciting. Like, let's see where this goes. And I'm walking down this path, and all of a sudden I get to the Chattahoochee River, and there is a bench swing sitting right next to the river. And I was like, oh, what is this? Someone put a swing right here. And I got on there and just started going back and forth. And I started crying because I remember when I was 4 and my kitten died that I was going to keep. I swung on the swing that day for like 2 or 3 hours, mourning that
Oh,
kitten. And it just came all back to me about how comforted I felt being held in that swing under the sunshine and just feeling the breeze, and my feet, had no shoes on them. And I thought, oh my gosh, I forgot how much I love to swing and how happy it makes me feel. And so that was something that, again, that I started using as something
mhm.
to do when I feel overwhelmed. I'm going to go swing.
I kind of want an adult swing now. I
I
guess that
know.
didn't come out right. Okay, I kind of want to
Oh,
swing.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know what you're saying. Oh my
I
gosh.
kind of want to swing in the backyard now. That sounds
Yeah.
so lovely. And, again, these are things that I don't think when we're going through crisis, especially,
Mhm.
we give ourselves the opportunity to be okay doing, right? But
Right.
knowing that those are the kinds of things that can help reset and really
And
finding that joy and space
mhm.
to be the person we want to be.
Yes, exactly. And so the book that I have coming out in March is called Soul Shift. And so much about what I write in Soul Shift is about returning to what you know inside before the world has told you who you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to live your life, and giving ourselves these permission slips to swing, to garden, to go to the library. This is not what society is telling us is what we should do with our time. This is not considered productive. You know, you don't have anything to show for that. So what good is it? That's when you have to say, wait a second, this is my life and I'm the only person who can take care of me. What do I need to get through this really crappy time in my life? And it's not to keep working. It's not to keep pushing your nose to the grindstone. That's not it.
Right. It is really finding where your soul wants to be. I can't wait to read your book when it comes out very soon.
Thank you.
I can't wait for all of this. Other permission slips that I need to write for myself. You know, I'm thinking through now. I'm like, oh, what other things do I want to do?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm a huge advocate of the sticky notes. And so throughout Soul Shift, my publisher allowed me to make these little sticky note illustrations with little messages that I had written to myself, and they're interspersed throughout the book. And so you'll just have all kinds of permission slips to spark your own ideas.
Oh, I can't wait. That'll be really fun. And then I'll be like, nope, I have to go garden now because
I have it here. It's in writing, you know.
It's in writing. I signed it myself. It's, you know, it's been signed by an adult. And there are so many additional ways that I think we can show up for our kids. But making sure that we are in the head space, body space, soul space that we want to be in. If we can't do that, I'm not sure that the rest of it matters, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we're going to be for me, I know that I'm going to just be reactionary, which is not necessarily how I want to happen.
No.
And people don't want to interact with me then either. And my kids don't want me to be the person who's coming into the appointment in a reactionary space.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're modeling all the time. And you know, it can be intimidating to think about that, but it can also be very motivating to say, my kids are learning how to navigate this crisis by watching how I'm navigating this crisis and how I'm handling this stressor.
Yes.
And when their world is unstable, like in a crisis time, and you know, maybe there's drama at school, so they go to school and there's drama there, and they have drama on social media. Well, the biggest gift that we can be is to be that steady in their life, that stable person. And over the holiday break, my 19-year-old, who, you know, we've had a lot of good heart-to-heart conversations about the crisis that we went through as a family, and she told me that the reason she likes to be around me is because I am stable. She said, I don't have to worry about what mood you're going to be in, what you're going to say if I tell you this or that. You're always steady and constant. And I just wanted to, like, you know, jump for joy because that was like the best compliment I could ever receive. And this is from the same daughter who, when she was 7 years old, I told her, I'm mean to myself, and so I'm mean to you. And so to be able to see, okay, this is where I started, but look at how far I've come. I'm the stable source of comfort in her life. And I don't think there's anything better to be.
That is so heartwarming and such a gift to hear. I mean, how wonderful. And thank you for reminding all of us that we can still change. We still
Yeah.
have that opportunity
Mhm.
to continue to be that stable person for our children. It doesn't matter how old we are, how old our
Exactly.
children are, we still have that opportunity because life has a lot of stuff, no matter how
Oh,
old our kids are.
yeah. Well, and also I do think there's something to be said for if you look back and you're like, wow, I really did not handle that crisis. I did not support them in a way
Mhm.
that was helpful. I I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with going to them and saying, you know, I've given it some thought and I really wish that I would have handled that in a different way.
Mhm.
And I know things now that I didn't know then. And give them an opportunity to say, because there might be some pain that they're carrying from, whatever happened, that reactionary response that you
Mhm.
wish you could take back. And for them to hear you say, I'm sorry, and
Mhm.
I'm learning, and even what what do you need from me in times like that? How can I support you? I mean, that goes a very, very long way.
It really goes a long way. Thank you for that reminder.
Mhm.
Well, Rachel, we are nearing the end of our time, and I have enjoyed this conversation so very much. But I have two final questions that I'd like to ask you. And the first is when you have a friend or loved one who's going through a crisis, what is your favorite thing to do for them?
Okay, this
What's
is
your
easy.
go-to?
This is easy. um, I love to make care packages. It is my favorite thing to do in the whole wide world, and I probably send a care package a week.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, that's how much fun I have making them. And I always put, I usually always put a copy of one of my books in there. Like one of the books, Only Love Today, is a daily affirmation type of book. And
Hmm.
so what I'll do is I'll get my sticky notes out and I'll mark pages that I think that person could use at this time of their trial, whatever they're going through. And then I'll write a little notes in it like, this is you, this is what you do for us. And and so they get this package which probably has like some cozy socks and some tea bags and maybe some hand lotion, but it's just a very cozy, uh, everything's really soft. Like I'm like, when you're going through a hard time, you need soft things. So I try to think of all the nice, soft, comforting things. And people, it's it's really special what people say when they get. I've had people say, I never got a care package in college, and I watched everybody else get a care package in college, and I never got one.
Oh,
And this is like my first care package. And it's just amazing how it makes them feel because they can see, this took her time, but I also it brings me joy. It's kind of selfish too because I'm like, oh, this is so fun, and I put tissue paper, and so I can be really creative, and
oh,
that's what I do every single time.
oh my gosh, that is so wonderful. Well, just a really quick side note, I was going through a hard time many years ago. I don't even remember the situation, but I received one of your books as a gift from a friend.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And she sent it to me on Kindle, actually, just as she's like,
wow.
you need this book right now.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that was how I was first introduced to you many, many years ago.
Oh, that's so
So
special.
your care packages and your books seem to be something that a lot of people agree is the is the thing to
Oh,
send to people. So thank you for that.
yay. Oh my gosh, that's so special. What a full circle moment.
Yes. Okay, so my last question though for you is, what is the best thing that anyone has ever done for you when you have been in crisis, or the thing that sticks out?
Mhm. So I would say, okay, so that incident that I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about at the beginning, that was definitely probably one of the lowest of lows that I've ever had in my entire life. And when I did write about it, it did raise some flags for people who love me. And because I didn't really, it's weird. I will write about things that I don't talk about with people in real life, and they'll have to find out about it on by reading about it. Like,
Surprise!
wait, Rachel went through this, you know. And so I had two friends, Carrie and Kelly, who lived in Birmingham, and I was in Atlanta, and they read it and they called me. One of them called me and said, "We're coming. We need to lay eyes on you."
Oh,
And they drove like whatever that is, 150 miles or so over to see me. And we had the best lunch and we laughed and talked. And it was about a 2 or 3 hour lunch. And then it was like, oh gosh, I gotta go because, I've got to pick up Avery. And Kelly said, wait, but we need to talk about what you wrote before you go. Are you okay? And I think, she could have just been like, oh, well, we had a great lunch. Everything's fine. Rachel looks good. But she asked that hard question. Like,
mhm.
she put it out there. Like, we know how much you were struggling and you scared us. So we need to know if you're okay. And so that inspires me also to ask that hard question that we often were like, well, everything looks fine. I don't need to go there. But she
Mhm.
went there, and of course the floodgates opened, and I talked
Yeah,
about things that I hadn't intended to talk about with anybody. And that was probably the biggest gift of love and comfort and compassion that anyone's ever given me in my time of crisis.
asking that really hard question.
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, how lucky for you to have that
Exactly.
opportunity. And thank you to them for checking in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rachel, it has been such a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you so much for giving our listeners the opportunity to hear more of your wisdom and to share some stories with them, and to
Oh.
write, hopefully, permission slips to go do something fun to find their
Oh,
dreamer.
oh, well, if they don't have any in mind, you just get the Soul Shift
Yes.
book. It's
Okay.
all in there. Yes,
Wonderful.
I poured my little dreamer heart out in that book. So just in that hopes that I could help someone else get connected to theirs.
I'm sure, I have no doubt that many people will. Well, thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much. I
I
appreciate your
appreciate
time.
you too. Bye, Aimee.
Bye, Rachel.